Ready to roll. Ready to turn left. Turn left. Turn left. Turn left. Here we are, safe and sound.
All right, good evening, everyone. This is John Tapp with the Freightliner Cascadia, Azur Lane Animated Vision, beginning with Montana today, the western part of Montana. This is going to be about under 800 miles from Rio, and this is going to be a good ride on that. So let's go get that race paper and we can all get going.
Time to hit the road. Turn left. Keep right, and then turn right. Turn right. Exit right.
All of its 25 bakeries in Gaza have shut down because they've run out of flour and fuel as a result of Israel's blockade. The UN Food Agency tells NPR it's also distributing its final food parcels to the neediest families and only has food supplies to last 2 more weeks to support charity kitchens that provide many with their only meal of the day. Israel's military says there's plenty of food in Gaza. The government says the blockade is to pressure Hamas. Mona Dahlis, a mother standing outside one of the shuttered bakeries in Gaza, tells NPR she's searching for food to feed her 3 daughters. Her youngest is underweight. Dahlis says she can't afford the price of a large sack of flour, which has soared to $80. Aya Batrawi, NPR News Dubai, with reporting by Anas Baba in Gaza City.
On the eve of the imposition of more tariffs by the Trump administration, the president and his administration are not saying exactly what the broad reciprocal levies will look like. The president is expected to have more to say about that tomorrow at an event in the White House Rose Garden. Trump says he has settled on a final plan, though. It's known the White House has weighed several options, including imposing a flat 20% tariff on all imports, where some advisors have also discussed assigning different levels to different countries. 2 female members of the House of Representatives fighting for a bill to allow remote voting for new parents have brought business in the chamber to a halt for the rest of the week. From NPR's Deidre Walsh.
Florida Republican Anna Paulina Luna and Colorado Democrat Brittany Patterson are trying to change House rules so that new parents could vote by proxy for up to 12 weeks around the birth of a child. GOP leaders opposed their bill and designed a measure to kill it, but 9 Republicans joined all House Democrats to defeat their effort. Luna says it's a win for parents.
We worked as a team, and I think that today is a pretty historical day for the entire conference. It's showing that the body has decided that parents deserve a voice in Washington, and also to the importance of female members having a vote in Washington, D.C.
The vote also blocked action on all other bills scheduled for this week. House Speaker Mike Johnson said he was disappointed. He said leaders would regroup and try again to block them next week. Deirdre Walsh, NPR News, the Capitol.
Some special elections going on in key battleground states are being seen as a litmus test for the Trump administration just months into his second term. Swing seat on the Wisconsin State Supreme Court and a couple of GOP-friendly congressional seats in Florida. We watch to see whether voter sentiment has changed since Election Day. A mixed close on Wall Street. The Dow fell 11 points. The Nasdaq was up 150 points. This is
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gail DeWater. The Texas Senate has given preliminary approval to a bill that would let teachers pray or engage in religious speech in the classroom. News 88.7 government reporter Andrew Schneider says it's the latest effort by Republican lawmakers to use a recent Supreme Court decision to expand the role of religion in public schools.
The Supreme Court ruled in 2022 that a high school football coach could pray on the field during and after games. GOP Senator Tan Parker said his bill would only write that ruling into Texas law, not go beyond it.
Senate Bill 965 codifies the right of school employees to engage in personal religious speech or prayer while on duty.
Democratic Senator Sarah Eckhart countered that the court's decision explicitly said that school employees could not engage in prayer in the scope of their school duties.
You are either willfully or unintentionally misreading the ruling.
The bill passed its second reading with a few crossover Democratic votes. The Senate must approve it one last time before it goes to the House. I'm Andrew Schneider, News 88.7.
Construction on the long-awaited redesign of Montrose Boulevard is about to start, but the project is a lot different from initial drafts created last year. The latest update doesn't have shared use paths for cyclists and pedestrians, and that's frustrating residents like Laura Conley.
It's an equity issue that there are people who can't choose to drive. So if the mayor is going to take away all our infrastructure for safety outside of cars, then maybe he should give everyone a car to be safe and a driver for those who can't drive, right?
The first phase of the project is expected to be finished in about a year. The Texas Department of State Health Services is confirming 22 new measles cases. There have been a total of 422 cases since the outbreak started in West Texas in January. For tonight, mostly cloudy skies, overnight low near 72 degrees. Tomorrow, partly sunny and breezy, high around 86. Breezy tomorrow night, low near 74. I'm Gail DeLauder, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people, and the Skoll Foundation, dedicated to powering social innovators to transform the world. Learn more at skoll.org.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Mary Louise Kelly.
And I'm Ari Shapiro. The Trump administration keeps eliminating federal government jobs. Today, thousands of workers at federal health agencies across the country found out they were being fired. NPR's Selena Simmons-Duffin is here in the studio to talk about it. Hi there.
Hi, Ari.
So who's leading this effort to lay off employees in Health and Human Services?
It is part of the DOGE effort to shrink the federal workforce. Last Thursday, Secretary of Health Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced plans to dramatically overhaul the department he oversees and cut the workforce by a total of 20,000 employees. That's almost 25% of staff. There was a loose outline of how it would go. Kennedy said it would focus on streamlining administrative work, but not a lot of details, so everyone was really holding their breath. Staff expected notices to go out on Friday, but they didn't. Over the weekend, nothing. Yesterday, nothing. Then today, around 5 a.m., reduction in force or RIF emails started to come in.
And how did the day unfold?
Well, some people woke up to the news in their inboxes. Some didn't, so they headed into work. And at several buildings, there were lines of workers snaking around the block. Many found out they had been fired when they tried to badge into the building, and their badge didn't work. Jennifer Hoenig's whole team was cut. She's a statistician who oversees a national survey on drug use and health. She saw the email early this morning before going to work in Rockville, Maryland, but she says not everyone did.
Like someone on my team specifically, he was able to badge in like normal. And then he went upstairs and got the RIF notice.
She says there was someone going around to the offices who told him to leave. Another source of mine thought she was okay. Her badge worked, she was at her desk, and then she got an email that said even though she hadn't gotten a notice, she should take her laptop and, quote, exit the building as soon as possible. NPR's not naming her because she feared retaliation for speaking publicly.
Do you have a sense of who was being cut, whether it fits into any pattern?
Well, we know what HHS told us last week, but nothing more. They're not answering more follow-up questions. And part of that might be because they're cutting communications teams across HHS. What NPR's health team does know has been pieced together by sources. The picture is honestly pretty confusing. I mean, there were cuts in tobacco regulation, rare disease research, HIV prevention, fertility research, occupational safety, utility assistance for low-income people, and more. A few very high-ranking NIH directors were given an offer to transfer to the Indian Health Service and given the option of several remote posts. Even people working on chronic diseases were cut, even though Kennedy says that's part of his new focus to make Americans healthier.
You've been talking to HHS staff all day. What have you heard?
I'm hearing sadness, confusion, tears, a lot of anger. Let me tell you one story. Scott Laney has worked for CDC for almost 20 years. He's based in Morgantown, West Virginia.
I work as an epidemiologist for the Coal Workers Health Surveillance Program, which does surveillance of chest radiographs for black lung in coal miners.
I reached him today at home, and he was absolutely shell-shocked. Nearly everyone in his center, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, was cut. They do things like evaluate face mask safety, firefighter deaths on the job, and more. Their whole building in Morgantown is set up for this specialized scientific work, and he says it's now just going to sit there empty. He got choked up talking about colleagues with young families, one coworker who's pregnant and due in 6 weeks, worrying about her health insurance running out.
It's absolutely heartbreaking, and at the same time realizing that I've lost my own job. And I don't know what I'm going to do.
And in just a sentence or two, what are Republicans saying about these cuts?
Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana invited Kennedy to come testify before the Health Committee next week to defend the reorganization and explain its goals.
NPR's Selena Simmons-Duffin, thank you.
Thank you.
The big earthquake last Friday in Myanmar is raising questions about whether that country's military rulers can hang on to power. Myanmar was already in dire shape before the earthquake, with civil war in full swing. The quake is also raising questions about the fate of Aung San Suu Kyi. She is the ousted leader of Myanmar, winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. She was arrested when the military seized power in a coup in 2021, and she has been in prison ever since. Well, her son, Kim Aris, is with me now in our studios here in Washington. Welcome.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. I want to ask, when was the last time you saw or spoke with your mother?
I spoke to her a couple of days before the coup. Since then, I've had only one letter from her.
When was that?
Almost 2 years ago now, I think, or just over 2 years ago.
Are you able to get messages to her in any way? Is her lawyer in contact?
I sent her letters and care packages, but since I received no reply, there's no way of knowing whether or not they get through. From what I understand, she hasn't been allowed to see her lawyers for at least a couple of years, and she's been held in solitary confinement.
Where? Where is she?
Well, we believe in Naypyidaw prison. It's very hard to confirm anything. Near where the earthquake hit.
Go straight on.
So we're very concerned about her well-being, obviously, but it's very hard to confirm anything. I do know that she has ongoing health concerns.
She's 79?
That's right. She'll be 80 this year, and she spent pretty much a quarter of her life incarcerated in one way or another.
The sentence that she is currently serving is 33 years on corruption and other charges. I will note that human rights groups have called those charges a sham. You are calling for them to be dropped?
Absolutely. I'm calling for her to be freed, along with all the other political prisoners, and for the country to be returned to its democratically elected government. The military have shown that they're incapable of ruling or leading their country in any way, and people will not accept it.
We mentioned the earthquake, a terrible event, obviously, with so many people killed and survivors desperate, even more desperate than they were for food, for medicine, for vital supplies. The quake has made what sounds like an already difficult situation in your country far more difficult.
Yes, the military have used natural disasters in the past to weaponize aid, and they're doing so again on this occasion, and they're still bombing innocent civilians at the same time. At the moment, they've cut off aid organizations getting to the most needy areas, and they're stopping journalists getting in.
We had the Myanmar country acting director for a major aid organization on the program yesterday, who was describing that his teams are able to move, they are getting access, but it's incredibly difficult, and there is vast need for medical supplies. Acknowledging the horror of the situation, does it open any doors, any opportunities for a change in your mother's circumstances?
We can only hope, but at the moment there isn't any indication of that, and I haven't heard of what the results are of that earthquake in the prison, really. I've heard that she's safe, but there's no way of confirming that.
I need to ask about a part of your mother's record. She won, as we said, the Nobel Peace Prize. She has also come under criticism for her response to the Rohingya crisis, for refusing to acknowledge the military's role in massacres.
That's incorrect. She never refused to acknowledge the military's role. She refused to condemn the military on the account of genocide. That's something else. But she always said the military were responsible for...
She defended the military at the International Court of Justice
she wasn't
against
defending
allegations
the military.
of genocide.
She was actually defending her country. That's something very different. She was working with the military, but not in any way against the Rohingya. She was always trying to do everything she could for the Rohingya, even before it came to the international community's attention. And the fact is that she was doing more for the Rohingya than anybody else in the world, which the media at the time failed to report on because it didn't fit their narrative.
Well, I will ask you, with no narrative or agenda, but just part of what has prompted criticism are the basic facts that there was a horrific exodus of hundreds of thousands of Rohingya across the border to Bangladesh. The Secretary General of the United Nations called what was happening in Myanmar ethnic cleansing, and your mother was the de facto leader. My question for you, did she ever express any regrets about how she handled that situation, whether she might have been able to do more?
I don't get to talk to my mother about political issues, really, since we only communicate over the phone often, and we know the military will be listening in. But I think, actually, she may have some regrets, but it wouldn't be the ones you think. She will be able to hold up her head and say she was doing everything she possibly could for the Rohingya. And if you read the evidence which is out there, I'm sure you would agree.
When were you last in Myanmar?
I think it was about 8 or 9 years ago, maybe.
Is that because you were not able to return because of security reasons?
Well, I wouldn't be able to go back now, certainly. But in the past, I generally go to Burma to see my mother, and she's been extremely busy, so I get to see her when I can.
You call your country Burma?
Yes.
In this moment, do you see a way out for Myanmar?
I do.
For how this war
Despite
ends?
the fact that the world is turning a blind eye to what's happening over there and is doing nothing to help, the military are losing, and they have the weaponry, the fighter planes, the backing of countries like China, Russia and India, and still they're losing. They're not in control of even 70% of the country now. So I do see hope that the resistance will win, and soon.
Kim Aris is the son of imprisoned political leader Aung San Suu Kyi of Myanmar. Thank you.
Thank you.
At 6:18 on a Tuesday evening, it's All Things Considered on your NPR station, News 87.
Go straight on.
81 Fahrenheit, 27 Celsius right now here at the UH campus. I'm David Pittman, out on the roads, heading out on the Tomball Parkway, northbound direction of 249. Got a wreck at the exit to Greens and Gessner, 2 left lanes taken up there. Eastbound I-10 heading out Baytown East Freeway. After more than an hour, the wreck at Monmouth has been cleared, and an hour is about what it will take you to get from the East Sam to Crossview Lynchburg. Stalls in your way, West Loop 610 southbound at Memorial, a disabled big rig, and the 2 center lanes. West Sam northbound, a stall at Tanner, and Hardy northbound, a stall after Rankin.
Auto manufacturers are phasing out subcompact cars in favor of larger SUVs.
Life was and has gotten very expensive for most people and can't afford an average crossover SUV of $30,000.
I'm Kristen Schwab. The legacy of little cars, next time on Marketplace.
And it's coming your way next at 6:30, followed by The Daily at 7 o'clock.
Support Houston Public Media by donating a vehicle you no longer need. We'll take it in any condition. It's free to you, easy to do, and it could mean hundreds of dollars in support. Visit HoustonPublicMedia.org/cars to learn more. Thanks.
Houston Public Media is licensed to the University of Houston System, governed by the UH Board of Regents. Information about open meetings, dates, times, and locations is online at uhsystem.edu. Support comes from Broadway Bank's commercial banking team. Since 1941, committed to helping businesses with their financial needs and growth. More information available at broadway.bank/commercial. Member FDIC. Support comes from Gen Pro, a Houston-based home generator service, providing power to homes during unexpected outages, helping with connectivity and productivity. More information is available at genpro.com.
It'll be breezy and cloudy overnight with a low around 72, partly sunny and breezy tomorrow with a high near 87, mid 620.
Support for NPR comes from the station and from Fisher Investments. Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. And from Easy Cater, committed to helping organizations order and manage food for all their business needs. With online ordering from restaurants nationwide, employee meal programs, and tools to control food expenses at EasyCater.com. This is NPR.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Mary Louise Kelly.
And I'm Elsa Chang. To hear President Trump tell it, tariffs are perhaps the political equivalent of duct tape. You can use them to fix almost anything. For example, they are a negotiating tool. He used the threat of tariffs to pressure Canada and Mexico to implement border policies he liked. Tariffs are also a revenue source to Trump that might help offset his proposed $4.5 trillion in tax cuts. And in Trump's view, tariffs can be a shield to protect American manufacturing jobs from overseas competition. The thing is, tariffs can't actually be all of those things at once. And so, with tomorrow's planned announcement of even more tariffs, we wanted to try to answer a seemingly simple question. What is President Trump's goal with tariffs? For that, I'm joined by Rana Faruhar. She's a columnist for the Financial Times. Welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So a lot of people who've been critical of Trump's tariffs have pointed out these different stated purposes seem at odds with each other. Like, to raise revenue, you have to apply the tariffs long term, right? So then they're no longer a bargaining chip. And if tariffs are successful in getting companies to stop importing and they boost manufacturing in the U.S., well, then you're losing tariff revenue, right? So how does the Trump administration explain all these contradictions? Do they explain them?
Well, they haven't explained them well. And I think that that's one of the reasons that markets have actually been very jittery in the last few days and weeks. And just to step way back, I mean, this is an experiment that really hasn't been tried in 40, 50 years. So what we're talking about is a big change to the way the American economy and the global economy potentially works. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of reasons for it. I want to even caveat a little bit further before I get into those and say, you always have to count his psychology as part of the equation here.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because Trump often talks about his belief that the U.S. has been ripped off by other countries through their tariffs. Is that true?
It's hard to say ripped off when you look at how successful the U.S. is and rich compared to really any other country. That said, you could look at the tariff numbers themselves. Average U.S. tariffs on the rest of the world are around 2%. Europe, EU would be about 5%. China would be about 10%. So you could look at those numbers and say, something's not fair here. Maybe we need to rejigger things.
Well, that's interesting. Well, Trump describes trade deficits as subsidies that we are paying to other countries. Would you characterize it that way, subsidies?
I wouldn't look at it as subsidies, and I don't get quite as worked up about the actual trade balance as Trump and some of his advisors do. But what I would say is that we have kept tariffs very, very low and allowed a lot of countries access to the U.S. market with the idea that the way you make an economy work is by driving up stock prices and lowering consumer prices. And having a very, very open market has allowed that to happen. But there have also been ways in which domestic industries, critical minerals, semiconductors, electric vehicles, when you don't support those industries, they can go abroad. And then in times of crisis, you may regret that.
Trump did tell NBC over the weekend that he, quote, couldn't care less if automakers raise their prices. So if cost to consumers aren't his metric for success, then what do you think is his metric for success here?
So I think that there are a number of economic nationalists within the administration that see tariffs as a way to reindustrialize, as a way to bolster critical areas, not just to the economy, but for security. Ships would be one good example. I mean, China's got about 5,500 seagoing vessels. America has a little over 180. That's a problem if you're in a war. But you have to do things at home and abroad if you want to actually support industries for economic or political or security reasons. And I don't see the home piece of this yet. I just see the tariff piece of it.
Rana Faruhar is a columnist for the Financial Times and the author of Homecoming, The Path to Prosperity in a Post-Global World. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
That is people banging pots and pans outside their windows in Istanbul, a nightly show of support for pro-democracy protesters. Hundreds have been arrested at demonstrations in past weeks. They are calling for the release of an imprisoned presidential candidate and political rival of Turkey's president. Duri Buskarin reports.
In Turkey, most people aren't going to work the week after Ramadan. School's out, offices are closed. Gulizar Tuncer had planned a week of relaxing, seeing family. Instead, she's meeting with lawyers and visiting her 20-year-old son, Jana Güneş, in a high-security prison. They were marching against injustice and corruption, Tuncer says. They were there with their teachers and even escorted by police. 2 days after the protest, police arrested Güneş from his home in an early morning raid. He was charged with participating in an illegal demonstration outside Istanbul's City Hall, which was attended by tens of thousands of people and many of his classmates. The whole point of these arrests is that it's intimidation, his mother says. That's why the arrests have turned into punishment. Güneş, a first-year student at Galatasaray University, has always felt strongly about human rights, his mother says. He planned to study philosophy. After years of sadness and despair in this country, they have become the voice of hope and resistance, Tuncer says. That's why the current powers have focused on the students. About 300 college students are among some 1,900 people arrested in connection with the protests since March 19th. Some were beaten during their arrest, suffering broken bones or injuries to their face, lawyers say.
Herkese merhaba. Öğrencilerin durumuyla alakalı.
In a video posted to Instagram, attorney Bedia Buyuk Gebiz is visibly upset after visiting student protesters in prison.
Pet gibi, diş fırçası gibi temel ihtiyaçlar.
They don't have basic necessities like pads or toothbrushes, she says. They're staying in the same cells as people accused of murder. Others were subject to strip searches for no apparent reason, she says.
Kanuna aykırı, anayasaya aykırı, insanlık.
It's illegal, it goes against the Constitution, and it's against human dignity, Buyuk Gebiz says. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his allies have insisted that the charges against jailed Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu are legitimate. On Sunday, Erdogan claimed that the opposition had, quote, lost their consciousness by targeting public safety and the economy in order to cover up the cycle of corruption and bribery. Selim Koru, a Turkish political expert and author based in London, says the administration extended the Ramadan holiday in the hopes that the protests would cool off.
They probably didn't anticipate this much noise, and they probably didn't anticipate this degree of organization on the opposition side.
Rallies in support of İmamoğlu have attracted hundreds of thousands of people. Tomorrow, protesters have called for a full boycott, asking people to buy absolutely nothing over the course of the day.
The idea that you and I go to the ballot box, we vote for somebody, and then that person represents us, that is sacred in Turkey. And if you disrupt that, people will, I think, remember.
The question is how long that momentum will last.
For NPR News, I'm Dori Buskarin, Istanbul.
At 6:29, you've been listening to All Things Considered on your NPR station, News 88.7. Marketplace is 1 minute away. Out on the road, still have the problem heading out on the Tomball Parkway 249 northbound. A wreck at the exit to Greens and Gessner. That's going to be heavy from the North Sam. West Loop 610 southbound. We're at about 2 hours now for that disabled big rig in the two center lanes. Apparently blew out its right front tire. And eastbound on the Baytown East Freeway. It's in a long, slow recovery from the East Sam for an earlier wreck at Monmouth. You could spend up to an hour getting to Crosby Lynchburg.
You depend on solid facts and trustworthy reporting from Houston Public Media, and your support makes sure it's there when you need it.
Now's your chance to protect the news that you rely on. Give right now to help ensure this trusted service stays strong for you and for your neighbors.
It's quick, it's easy, and it's something you can do right now.
Don't wait. Give today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Turn right.
Marketplace is supported by the University of Illinois Geese College of Business, offering a fully online MBA program learners can take at their own pace. onlinemba.illinois.edu.
Today we'll talk jobs, dwindling 401ks, and the disappearance of the subcompact car. And of course, we'll cover tariffs too. From American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Betterment, the automated investing app that does the work, allowing people to focus on what matters most. Learn more at betterment.com. Investing involves risk. And by Solidigm. Today's AI ambitions require a different approach to storage. Solidigm offers solid-state storage solutions optimized for AI with higher capacities, greater speed, and energy efficiency. StorageForAI.com. And by Commvault. Businesses can recover data as well as cloud applications and platforms after a cyber attack in just minutes with Commvault, so they can become a continuous business.
In New York, I'm Kristen Schwab in for Kai Risdal. It's Tuesday, April 1st. Good to have you with us. The headline number of the day has nothing to do with the T word, though we will get to tariffs in a bit. Today, we kick things off with the JOLTS report, or the Job Openings and Labor Turnover Survey, out this morning from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Changed little is the phrase of the day. February saw 7.6 million job openings and 5.4 million hires, both about the same as in January. And the number of quits and layoffs didn't change much either. Remember, February's numbers do not reflect the bulk of federal layoffs. We might get a better picture of that come the March jobs report out on Friday. Overall, though, this JOLTS data shows what looks like a steady, decent labor market. With one asterisk, layoffs were up at the smallest of small businesses. That's companies with fewer than 10 workers. Marketplace's Daniel Ackerman looked into small business staffing decisions.
Eric Saunders runs Carolina Landscaping and Cleanup near Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. He's got just a couple full-time employees, and with major question marks over how much his customers are willing to spend these days, he sure isn't hiring.
Yeah, holding steady. Unless the market changes to where people aren't so worried about every little cent they have, it's just kind of hard to do anything right now with laborers.
Holding steady in the face of uncertainty was kind of the theme of today's JOLTS report, says Ron Hedrick, senior labor economist with Lightcast.
Workers don't want to go anywhere. Employers don't want to hire. Everybody just freezes.
Really small businesses, though, were laying off workers at a higher rate than anyone else. Pavlina Cherneva, an economist at Bard College, says that's an indicator to watch. Because even though firms with fewer than 10 workers represent just about 1/8 of total employment,
to me, their behavior is bellwether for overall trends in the economy.
Cherneva says that's because small firms have no choice but to respond quickly to a changing economy.
A small business owner really is working day-to-day, month-to-month. They don't have savings, liquidity, access to credit nearly to the same extent as a big company would.
So when small businesses feel the need to cut costs, reducing workforce is a tempting lever to pull, says Lindsay Owens, executive director of progressive think tank Groundwork Collaborative.
Our measures of small business uncertainty have skyrocketed. And so for me, it is no surprise at all that we're starting to see the layoffs in small businesses.
But sentiment has soured among businesses of all sizes, says Guy Berger of economic research nonprofit the Burning Glass Institute. It's just that
a large enterprise is like, we always joke, is a super tanker, right? It takes time to turn around.
So changes to headcount might take an extra month or two to play out. I'm Daniel Ackerman for Marketplace.
Wall Street today, a little up, a little down, as it waits to hear more on tariff policy. We'll have the details when we do the numbers. Tomorrow, on April 2nd, or what President Trump has been calling Liberation Day, the U.S. intends to impose a 25% tariff on imported vehicles, light trucks, and auto parts, which were announced last week. There may be other tariffs on the table, but Trump has not yet announced his full plan. The thing about ever-shifting and unannounced plans is they're hard to plan for. So we called up one of our regulars. Gretchen Blau is a customs broker manager at Logistics Plus in Erie, Pennsylvania. Hi, Gretchen. How are you?
Good.
Is that a loaded question right now?
Yeah, this week it kind of is. So.
Can you catch me up on what's happened since we last heard from you? What is work like right now?
Well, it's a little crazy. We have the steel and aluminum tariffs that are in effect, and then we have a bunch of other tariffs that are going into effect tomorrow. The steel and aluminum, that has the 25% tariff on it with no exclusions, no exceptions. But there's also some finished goods that have this tariff on it as well, where if a large component of steel or aluminum in the finished good, we basically need to break everything out into a bill of material, and then that 25% only applies to the steel or the aluminum, and then the rest doesn't have the 25%. So that's presenting a problem for a lot of our importers because none of us were expecting that. If they don't have that information, then everything has the 25% apply to the entire good, which no one really wants that to happen either, but you have to weigh what costs more, the storage or the tariff at this point.
Right, well, that's a lot of ins and outs. How do you even keep track of all the nitty-gritty when the rules are constantly changing? And, I assume you got to dot all your I's and cross your T's.
Oh, it's not always easy. Mostly we're relying on the Federal Register when it's updated, but that's not always updated right away. We used to have fact sheets available on the government websites, and those seem to have gone away. So we're relying a lot on just news publications and whatnot to get a lot of the information as to how things are going to apply, because we don't have things readily available. So we're trying to keep our customers up to date and our operations folks up to date, and it's not always easy to do that when we're not quite sure what's going to happen. For example, tomorrow there's scheduled to be 25% on Canada and Mexico, and also retaliatory tariffs, which we aren't quite certain what those are going to include for other countries.
I talked to a small scale banana importer yesterday who was talking about how she just doesn't have a lot of alternatives. She's got to import from Mexico.
Right.
What are you hearing from your clients about buying in America or buying American?
Well, you see that a lot on comments on Facebook posts and whatnot, but that's not always realistic. There's a lot of stuff that you can buy that's made in America that has foreign components, and it hurts manufacturers here because now they have to pay more for their components. Buy America, it's not always the alternative. And the other thing is, if the manufacturing does come back to the United States for these component parts, it's going to take some time to build the plants and get things operational in order to source them here in the U.S.
As somebody who has an intimate look on the ground of how tariffs are impacting businesses, also your own work, How much planning can you do for the next few months or the year ahead? Or is it just more of a day-by-day, in-the-moment kind of workplace right now?
Well, it tends to be just an in-the-moment type thing. It's really hard to plan when, as we saw with the tariffs with Canada and Mexico, they're on again, they're off again, they're on again, they're off again. You don't know what's going to happen from day to day sometimes. And plus the retaliatory tariffs, we don't even know what those are going to be.
Do you have a long day ahead of you? What are your work days like right now?
My work days are answering a lot of questions. A lot of upset importers right now, kind of, explaining everything to everyone, having people that aren't too happy because they had something on the water. In order to import it, it costs 25% more than they were expecting. And people trying to explain to me that, they've had this purchased for 6 months. Why do they have to pay this now? And I really don't have a good answer for them because I'm just the messenger, unfortunately.
Gretchen Blau is a customs broker manager at Logistics Plus in Erie, Pennsylvania. Gretchen, thanks so much for coming back on the show.
Thank you.
As we just talked about, cars are likely to get more expensive because of tariffs. And this is against the backdrop of the trend of cars getting more expensive. Because recently, the auto industry has been phasing out some of its lowest-priced vehicles. Mitsubishi ended production of the Mirage in December, so it'll likely be gone from dealer lots by this summer. And Nissan reportedly plans to discontinue the Versa after this year. These are the last 2 new car models with starting prices under $20,000, according to Car and Driver. Marketplace's Henry Epp reports on the disappearing subcompact.
There's nothing fancy about the 2024 Mitsubishi Mirage. It's a small car available as a hatchback or a sedan. Tim Bedard shows me the sedan version in black at the Mitsubishi dealership he owns near Burlington, Vermont.
It has the power locks, the windows, cruise control, tilt steering wheel, air conditioning. It has enough amenities to make it comfortable.
But there's no getting around the fact that there's just not a lot of room inside. Though its small size, Bedard says, contributes to its real selling points.
The beauty of the car is price tag, warranty, fuel efficiency.
$18,000, 10-year warranty, 39 miles per gallon, better than any car that isn't a hybrid. And that sticker price, $30,000 less than the average new car right now, according to Kelley Blue Book. Bedard says it makes sense that about a third of the new vehicles he sells are Mirages, though they're not likely to turn many heads.
No one's like, oh, wow, you have a Mirage? Wow, cool.
Clayton Seams of Toronto bought a 2021 Mirage a couple years ago. He's an editor with the Canadian automotive publication Driving.ca, and he had some strict criteria when he was shopping for his own car.
I had $15,000 cash. I want a car I could buy without a car loan or a lease.
And he wanted something that was easy to drive and park in the city. The Mirage fit the bill, and despite its limitations...
It's very noisy at highway speed, and the stereo is honestly not very good.
He actually really likes it.
It just felt like driving a car from the 90s that was back, and it was simple, it had a manual transmission, it was charming in a way of how basic it was.
But basic is not what most car buyers are looking for these days, says Jessica Caldwell, head of insights at Edmunds.
We like SUVs, trucks, vehicles with just more cargo capacity, so even if it is a bit on the smaller side, it still is more of an SUV format rather than a sedan format with a trunk.
For years now, she says sales of larger vehicles have been climbing. Affordable, smaller cars, on the other hand...
We're just seeing the demand for these vehicles go away, despite the fact that a lot of Americans are dealing with financial difficulties right now.
Caldwell says automakers have responded to that declining demand by dropping smaller vehicles from their lineups. The Ford Fiesta, Toyota Yaris, Honda Fit, all gone. But the change isn't just about consumer preferences. Bigger vehicles are more profitable. Because making a subcompact isn't that much cheaper than making an SUV, says Patrick Olson, editor-in-chief at Carfax. Some newer SUVs are even built on the same platforms as the old subcompacts. Honda's HR-V, for example, is the sibling of that discontinued Honda Fit.
So for not a lot more cost in material in terms of aluminum or steel to build the car, they could put a higher price tag on it because there's more demand for that vehicle.
Federal fuel economy regulations play a role too. The Trump administration is currently reviewing them, but right now they require smaller vehicles to get better mileage than bigger ones. Olson says that gives car makers an incentive to go large.
Bigger SUVs, bigger pickup trucks, because it's easier to meet those standards than it is for the smallest of vehicles.
The industry's increasing focus on larger vehicles has thrown the new car market out of whack, according to Burlington Mitsubishi owner Tim Bedard.
With the influx of SUVs and crossovers that have taken over the market, we kind of lost sight that life was and has gotten very expensive for most people and can't afford an average crossover SUV of $30,000. What's the consumer do now?
At least until the summer, Bedard expects to have Mirages available on his lot. After that, a used vehicle might be the price-conscious consumer's best option, but they're 32% more expensive than they were just before the pandemic. I'm Henry App for Marketplace.
Coming up,
biggest cost fluctuations we're looking at right now, as you can imagine, eggs.
Eggs are everywhere, not just bakeries and breakfast joints, but cocktail bars too. But first, let's do the numbers. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 11 points, essentially flat, to close at 41,989. The Nasdaq gained 150 points, 0.9%, to finish at 17,449. And the S&P 500 found 21 points, 0.4%, to end at 5633. The Department of Justice is reportedly close to approving Capital One's buying of Discover for $35 billion. Capital One Financial Corporation lost 0.6%. Discover Financial Corporation fell 0.1%. Meanwhile, the mortgage company Rocket this week announced its acquisition of rival Mr. Cooper Group in a $9.4 billion deal. Rocket shares grew 4 4/10%. Mr. Cooper Group added 4 6/10%. Bonds rose. The yield on the 10-year T-note fell to 4.16%. You're listening to Marketplace.
The Numbers is supported by Odoo.com, your entire business on one platform. Marketplace is supported by Bitwarden Password Manager. Bitwarden is designed to strengthen all passwords across any device at any location to secure sensitive information for all business and personal accounts. Learn more at Bitwarden.com. And by Pure Storage. In a world of fragmented systems, Pure Storage delivers a single, consistent as-a-service platform for all data storage needs across on-premises, cloud, and hosted environments. More at purestorage.com. And by Certified Financial Planner Professionals. CFP professionals are committed to acting in their client's best interest. Learn more about CFP professionals at letsmakeaplan.org.
At 6:47, you're listening to News 87. And on the Tomball Parkway, 249 northbound still have the wreck at the exit to Gessner. Only the right shoulder getting by with that. West Loop 610 southbound still have a disabled big rig in the 2 center lanes. Been there since around 4:30. And eastbound I-10 Baytown East still in a crawl from the East Sam due in part to an earlier wreck at Monmouth.
We saw something in Wisconsin that we've never seen in any race anywhere else in the country, where a single donor who also happens to be the chief policy director of the White House basically built an entire campaign for one of the president's allies.
I'm Michael Barbaro. That's Today on the Daily from the New York Times.
It's coming your way next at 7 o'clock.
Support comes from the Woodlands Waterway Arts Festival. Over 200 artists, authors, live music, food, and children's activities at the Woodlands Waterway, April 11th through 13th. More at thewoodlandsartscouncil.org, a 20-year journey of making art matter.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kristen Schwab. The first business quarter of the year has officially closed. With that comes envelopes and emails of quarterly statements for 401ks, IRAs, and mutual funds. And unfortunately, those summaries will be full of minus signs, showing how much investors lost over the last 3 months. On this show, we often, especially over the last handful of years, we often talk about the wealth effect. Basically, how when assets like stocks and homes go up in value over time, people feel richer, even if it's just on paper, and are likely to spend more because of it. So what happens when investments shrink? Marketplace's Mitchell Hartman reports.
Things were going really well for the stock market until they weren't anymore, says Rob Hayworth at U.S. Bank Asset Management.
In the middle of February, we had the S&P 500 touching new all-time highs, and we finished the quarter in negative territory for the year so far.
S&P 500 down 4.5%, NASDAQ down 10%. Economist Kathy Bosjancic at Nationwide says there'll be a psychological impact.
When you see this sharp decline in equity prices, that's the negative wealth effect. Consumers start to pull back.
But here's the thing, for a lot of Americans, the majority of their wealth is in their homes.
Latest data continued to show appreciation in home prices. So that, in terms of like a wealth effect, is still intact.
And as for stocks, Sam Stovall at CFRA Research says history shows that a sharp decline followed by a quick rebound, like we've seen recently, doesn't usually lead to a prolonged downturn. But he says most small investors probably don't know that.
They're the ones that are most likely to allow their emotions to become their portfolio's worst enemy.
One group that's especially nervous right now, people 55 and up, seeing their retirement accounts decline in the midst of rising economic uncertainty, says Olivia Mitchell at the Wharton School.
A lot of financial advisors advocate just ride the bumps, you'll be all right in the long run.
Mitchell is over 70 and not really listening.
I myself got basically completely out of U.S. equities about 2 weeks ago.
As for whether recent losses on stocks will translate into less spending on stuff, Rob Hayworth at U.S. Bank says declines of this magnitude don't always squelch retail sales.
The biggest driver we see for consumer spending is really, do people have jobs and are their incomes growing?
More, he says, than the negative wealth effect from a falling stock market. I'm Mitchell Hartman for Marketplace.
We got a window this morning into how farmers and ranchers are feeling about the economy. Purdue University's Farmer Sentiment Index slipped in March.
Here we go.
Farmers have weaker expectations for the future, with more than 40% of them citing trade policy as the top driver of pessimism. And 5-year expectations for ag export markets hit an all-time survey low. Marketplace's Savannah Peters has more on agriculture's cloudy outlook.
Farmers are used to dealing with the unknown, says Kristen Owen, managing director with the research firm Oppenheimer.
We usually think about uncertainty coming from weather, coming from pests.
And we usually think of federal policy as insulating the farm economy from those chaotic forces. But right now, it's piling on. Owen says farmers who were already stressed about breaking even in a tough commodity price environment now have bigger things to worry about.
Where do we send grain and where do we send agricultural products globally?
If countries targeted by Trump administration tariffs respond with tariffs of their own, demand could fall for American corn and soybeans and other ag exports. Michael Langemeyer, who runs the Purdue survey, says it's sort of surprising farmer sentiment wasn't lower in March.
A lot of the respondents are thinking that, yes, it looks like we're going to have tariffs, they're going to have a negative impact on farm income, but they're expecting some compensation.
Compensation like the billions in federal relief paid to farmers during the last Trump administration trade war. 2/3 of respondents to the Purdue survey are expecting something similar. Josh Gackel is with the American Soybean Association.
Farmers would much rather have an open and fair and free market that we can sell our products to.
Get ready to
Gackel farms soybeans, corn, and barley in Coulomb, North Dakota, where he says the mood is pretty jittery.
If you go to the local cafe and you sit down at a table with a group of neighbors, the first thing that comes up in the conversation is, what is the price of soybeans today? What's the price of corn? What's the price of wheat?
In his small town, Gackel says everyone's livelihood is tied up in shifting trade policy. I'm Savannah Peters for Marketplace.
Yesterday, Sabri Benishore did a story on how things have been a bit tough lately for bars and restaurants. Spending has been down, and so has hiring. Here's another service industry story, this time from the co-owner of a vinyl listening bar. It's the latest installment of our series, My Economy.
My name is Brian Tedorakis, and I am one of the owners of Bad Medicine in Cleveland, Ohio. We call ourselves a listening bar or a hi-fi bar, so we don't do any streaming whatsoever, no Spotify, no Tidal. Everything's played through vinyl records on a vintage hi-fi system. A lot of my friends and family, when they come in the first time, they're usually not empty-handed. So I just got some cool records from a friend I haven't seen in a while. Over the weekend, he stopped by for the first time and brought Alice Coltrane.
Get ready to turn right.
I work at Bad Medicine, I would say part-time. I think about it all day, every day. I'm shooting emails and working on things on the side, but I do have a full-time day job that pays my salary until the bar can do that. We have 4 front-of-the-house employees currently, not including myself, and we have 2 back-of-the-house employees. One of them is a chef partner, and the other one is a part-time line cook. Compensating staff is always something that we talk about and, make sure that it's appropriate. We're one of the states where you have a tip tax credit where you can pay below minimum wage, but we pay well and above that, 3 to 5 times more, as a matter of fact. The biggest cost fluctuations we're looking at right now, as you can imagine, eggs. So egg white cocktails are very much a thing. People request them all the time, but an egg white costs about $1 now, so it gets a little bit difficult. We use the vegan version called Aquafaba. It's chickpea water. It doesn't have the same taste to it. The texture is pretty similar, but as far as not having to raise prices or charge anyone a surcharge or anything like that, it's been pretty dependable. The bar's been negative the first couple months, but it was predominantly because we were doing so much spending as we were, learning the space. And the past 2 months, we have not been in the negative at the end of the month, so we're hoping for greener pastures now. It's stressful owning a bar, but it's also very gratifying. My day job, I don't get to be very creative, so I love to go in there, bounce cocktail ideas. That's my creative outlet. That's my place that I get to go and express my work. It's my acrylics. That's Van Gogh paints. I mix whiskey and sugar together.
Brian Tedorakis, co-owner of Bad Medicine in Cleveland, Ohio. This series only works with your help. Tell us about your economy at marketplace.org/myeconomy.
Marketplace is supported by LHH. LHH empowers professionals and organizations to achieve their ambitions and secure lasting impact through custom advisory services and talent solutions. LHH, a beautiful working world. Learn more at lhh.com/beautiful. And by the Peter G. Peterson Foundation, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to raising awareness and accelerating action on America's fiscal challenges to build a brighter economic future for the next generation. Learn more at pgpf.org.
This final note on the way out, another note about cars. We saw this in the Detroit Free Press. Monthly auto sales came out today. At Ford Motor Company, sales were down a bit more than 1% compared to the same quarter last year. That's not really the interesting part here because that number includes sales to car rental companies and the like. The interesting part is retail sales were up 5% last quarter. Analysts attribute the spike to consumers trying to get ahead of tomorrow's tariffs. The Ford Maverick saw an all-time monthly sales record in March. The Maverick is built and assembled in Mexico. Our digital and on-demand team includes Carrie Barber, Jordan Manji, Dylan Mietinen, Janet Wynn, Olga Oxman, Ellen Rolfus, Edward Silver, Virginia K. Smith, and Tony Wagner. Francesca Levy is the Executive Director of Digital and On-Demand. And I'm Kristen Schwab. We'll be back here tomorrow. This is APM.
We're a minute away from 7 o'clock on a Tuesday evening on your NPR station, News 88.7. One last look at the drive home. Tomball Parkway heading out northbound 249. The wreck at the exit to Gessner just cleared. You'll have to unwind from the north belt. Pretty solid at that point, I should say. Eastbound I-10 heading in Katy Freeway right before the West Loop. Got a wreck in the right lanes. And on the West Loop itself, southbound 610, 2.5 hours now for that disabled big rig taking up 2 center lanes.
Support comes from UT Health Houston, home to maternal fetal specialist Dr. Jerry Refuerzo, who helps keep moms and babies healthy and safe through high-risk pregnancies and births. More at uth.edu/manyfaces.
40 minutes away from sunset, mostly cloudy and breezy overnight with a low around 72. Tomorrow's sunrise, 719, partly sunny and breezy again with high near 87. Right now it's 81 degrees here at your NPR station, KUHF Houston, News 88.7, service of the University of Houston. It's 7 o'clock.
Musk is doing this to place himself as the central banker of the MAGA movement. He is the cash behind candidates that are loyal to Donald Trump. And by doing this, if he wins, he sets a template for all of the future Republican candidates.
I'm Michael Barbaro. That's coming up on The Daily from the New York Times.
The Daily is supported by Progressive Insurance. Customers can simplify their insurance needs and protect what's important by bundling home and auto. Learn more about bundling at Progressive.com. And by Betterment, the automated investing app that does the work, allowing people to focus on what matters most. Learn more at Betterment.com. Investing involves risk. You're listening to The Daily, distributed by American Public Media.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Speer. Layoffs at the Department of Health and Human Services are now underway. The Trump administration says the layoffs of about 10,000 workers will save about $1.8 billion annually. That is still just a fraction of the agency's $1.7 trillion budget. NPR's Selena Simmons-Duffin says notices to employees began going out early this morning.
Some people woke up to the news in their inboxes. Some didn't, so they headed into work. And at several buildings, there were lines of workers snaking around the block. Many found out they had been fired when they tried to badge into the building, and their badge didn't work. Jennifer Hoenig's whole team was cut. She's a statistician who oversees a national survey on drug use and health. She saw the email early this morning before going to work in Rockville, Maryland, but she says not everyone did.
The dismissals included researchers, scientists, doctors, support staff, and senior leaders. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced plans to remake the department last week. Wisconsin's state Supreme Court race is happening today. Out-of-state fundraising, including by George Soros and Elon Musk, helped to make it the most expensive judicial race in U.S. history. Wisconsin Public Radio's Nick Rommel reports the national attention did not go unnoticed by local voters.
A senior center in Germantown, a Milwaukee suburb, was bustling on Election Day. Voters were casting ballots in the race between liberal Susan Crawford and conservative Brad Schimmel. One was Jessica Coons. She said constant election ads didn't affect her Crawford vote, but knowing who was paying for the ads did.
Those don't really affect me as much as knowing what's all being put into it.
Steve Tuchek said he was surprised the race got so much national attention.
I was surprised by it. I really was. But I believe our nation's headed in the right direction now.
He said he would have voted for Schimmel whether or not Musk had supported him. For NPR News, I'm Nick Rommel in Germantown, Wisconsin.
Russia says it cannot accept White House proposals to end the war in Ukraine as currently presented. The Russian comments coming in response to President Trump's growing frustration over the Kremlin's unwillingness to accept a wider ceasefire. From Moscow, NPR's Charles Maines reports.
Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Rybkov told a Russian policy journal Moscow took the U.S. peace proposals seriously, but argued they'd done little so far to address the root causes of the conflict. Doing so, said Rybkov, would require a formal end to Ukraine's bid to join the NATO alliance and Kyiv's acceptance of Russian control over 5 Ukrainian regions Moscow claims to have annexed. President Trump returned to office promising to negotiate a quick peace, only to find Russian demands have stymied even limited ceasefire deals. In turn, Trump has warned he may slap new tariffs and sanctions on Russian energy if he feels the Kremlin is dragging its feet on negotiations. Charles Maines, NPR News, Moscow.
On Wall Street, the Dow is down 11 points. This is NPR. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi is directing federal prosecutors to seek the death penalty against 26-year-old Luigi Mangione, the man who's accused of gunning down United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson outside a Manhattan hotel last December. Bondi made the announcement today. Mangione faces separate federal and state charges in the case, including murder through use of a firearm. Mangione is currently being held in a New York jail and is awaiting trial. He has pleaded not guilty to some state charges. The pair of celebrity bald eagles in the mountains east of Los Angeles will soon have names. Students from 3 elementary schools in the area got the honor of choosing what the baby birds will be called and cast ballots today. KBCR's Madison Ahmed has more.
The 3rd through 5th graders at Baldwin Lane Elementary in Big Bear have been watching the eaglets' parents since kindergarten.
Who knows the name of the eagles?
Jackie and Shadow.
Yeah, Jackie and Shadow. You've all grown up with Jackie and Shadow.
Tens of thousands of viewers from around the world have also been watching Jackie and Shadow, who have their own 24/7 live stream. Their 2 chicks hatched about a month ago and are now about 10 inches tall.
You're going to pick your 2 favorites.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sandy Steers, who runs the live stream, passed out ballots to students with 30 names for the chicks.
Sky, Crackle, Griffin.
Steers plans to announce the winners on Wednesday. For NPR News, I'm Madison Ahmed in Big Bear.
Crude oil futures prices edged lower today as traders brace for the possible effects of Trump administration tariffs tomorrow. Oil down 28 cents a barrel to settle at $71.20 a barrel. I'm Jack Spear, NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people, and the Skoll Foundation, dedicated to powering social innovators to transform the world. Learn more at skoll.org.
From the New York Times, I'm Michael Barbaro. This is The Daily. On paper, today's election in Wisconsin is about whether Democrats or Republicans should control the state's highest court. In reality, it's become a referendum on Elon Musk, his agenda in Washington, and his willingness to flood American politics with his money. Today, my colleague Reed Epstein on the local election that everyone is watching. It's Tuesday, April 1st. Reed, as we know, after every presidential election, the political world turns its attention to the first batch of special elections, these off-season races that happen when somebody retires or gets chosen to be in the president's cabinet and they leave a vacant seat. And we study these, as you know, for signs of how the voting public feels about the new president, direction of the country, and both parties.
Yeah, this really began about a week after Trump was inaugurated in a state Senate election in eastern Iowa, in a rural Republican part of the state, where the Republican who had held the seat before had won by 22 points the last time the seat was up.
Safe Republican seat.
A safe Republican seat. And the Democrat prevailed by 4 points in an election that hadn't gotten a lot of attention or investment from the parties.
Wow.
But it was a sign that there was some grassroots, organic enthusiasm for Democratic candidates in this new Trump era. And fast forward to a week ago, there was another special election in Pennsylvania for another state Senate seat. This one got a little bit more attention, but not really any money. And it was a district that Donald Trump had won by 15 points last fall. And again, the Democratic candidate won. And the people in the party took it as evidence that there was some real anger bubbling up about what Trump was doing in the White House that was reaching all the way down to some of these local races. And that brings us to Florida, where we have a pair of special congressional elections today to fill seats held by former congressmen who were Trump loyalists in districts where Republicans win by 25 or 30 or 35 points typically. So these are not districts that even in a Democratic wave that the party would expect to be terribly competitive, but their candidates have outraised the Republican favorites in these races.
Wow.
And there is a lot of concern on the Republican side about these House seats. I should say the concern on the Republican side is not shared by optimism on the Democratic side. They do not think that they're going to win these seats, but they are enjoying watching Republicans fret about them. And then there's the race that I've been focused on. The contest for the deciding seat on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. The court in Wisconsin has an outsized role in the state's politics. It was the place where Donald Trump, just by one vote on the court in 2020, failed to reopen the state's election count in his effort to overturn the results of the election.
Right.
It's a court that in upcoming months will determine the fate of abortion rights in the state. It's also likely to have a case seeking to redraw congressional district lines in Wisconsin. These are basically super legislators on the court who will have a lot of authority for making policy that impacts Wisconsin and eventually the rest of the country.
So tell us about the candidates for this race today, for that judgeship.
So you have to remember, this is formally a nonpartisan election, but nobody's really fooled about which side the candidates belong to. The Liberal candidate is a local judge in Dane County, which includes Madison, named Susan Crawford.
I was standing up in court fighting for the rights of women and their doctors to make those critical decisions about health care. You know, when I went to...
And she was a private practice lawyer who represented liberal causes like Planned Parenthood and the local teachers unions before she became a judge. She is about as milquetoast and bland as a political candidate gets in 2025.
I'm going to ask you for your vote, and thank you so much for your attention.
Judge Schimmel.
I've spent 35 years representing the people of Wisconsin during a large...
The conservative candidate is a local judge in Waukesha County named Brad Schimmel.
I know that Donald Trump has said some things that are bad, and I don't like hearing anyone talk that way about women.
He was the Republican Attorney General of the state a couple cycles ago.
But Donald Trump will appoint judges who will defend our Constitution and respect our Constitution. Thank you.
He has spent much of his career in politics and the judiciary, demonstrating his loyalty to Trump and Republicans.
Right. Not particularly nonpartisan, this race, it seems.
It is the most partisan, nonpartisan race that we've had in quite a while. And Democrats really expected that this race would act like a lot of these races beforehand, where there's a reaction to the party in power and that their voters would be more energized to come out and make a statement against the Trump administration than Republican voters would be in sort of confirming what was happening in Washington.
Right, which is exactly what just happened in Iowa and Pennsylvania.
Right, in a similar pattern to these other special elections. But then Elon Musk got involved, and we saw something in Wisconsin that we've never seen in any race anywhere else in the country, where a single donor who also happens to be the chief policy director of the White House, with his own checkbook, basically built an entire campaign for one of the president's allies. And he, so far, has spent more than $20 million.
Wow.
And he's also the largest single donor to the Wisconsin Republican Party, which can then give money directly to Schimmel's campaign. He has given more than 25% of all of the money spent on this race from both sides combined. And that's made this election in Wisconsin the first real test of whether the Democratic enthusiasm to push back against what's happening in Washington can overcome Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and all of the money that Musk has directed toward them.
We'll be right back.
The Daily is supported by BetterHelp, committed to supporting mental health through therapy. Clients are matched with one of 30,000 therapists and can communicate via video, chat, or phone at betterhelp.com/public.
Rigorous reporting told through a human lens. Go deeper into the most important stories of the day with The Daily, an audio series from the New York Times. Distribution of The Daily is made possible by American Public Media. APM produces and distributes programs that inform and inspire, entertain, and engage audiences everywhere.
This is News 88.7.
Columbia University graduate Mahmoud Khalil's arrest by ICE has garnered national attention. Nearly a dozen more international students have been detained since, as the crackdown on pro-Palestinian supporters continues. Who gets to dissent under Trump? That's next time on 1A.
Tomorrow at 1 o'clock here on News 88.7.
Support comes from the Imprint Brown Reading Series, presenting two novelists, author of Intimacies, Katie Kitamura, and Karen Russell, author of Swamplandia, with their latest works, April 14th at the Alley Theater. More at imprint.org.
Donations come in many forms: a monthly membership, a one-time gift, and that extra vehicle you no longer need. We take any kind of vehicle in any condition. Learn more at houstonpublicmedia.org/cars. And thank you.
On paper, today's election in Wisconsin is about whether Democrats or Republicans should control the state's highest court. In reality, it's become a referendum on Elon Musk, his agenda in Washington, and his willingness to flood American politics with his money. My colleague, Reed Epstein, on the local election that everyone is watching. So, Reed, why did Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, choose this race of all races to pour his money into right now?
Well, Michael, there's a lot of theories. First, it's the biggest, most important race on the calendar until November. So if he's going to get involved in something, it would be this. He has a non-trivial personal financial stake in the outcome. Tesla, the car company that he is the chief executive of, is suing the state of Wisconsin over a state law that forbids Tesla from opening its own car dealerships in the state without going through a franchisee. A lot of states have laws like this. Tesla has sued or maneuvered around them in many states where it operates, but Wisconsin had said no, and in January, Tesla filed a lawsuit, and about a week later, Musk started tweeting about the Supreme Court race.
Is the thinking that this lawsuit would eventually go to the Wisconsin Supreme Court?
It would, presuming that if Musk lost at the lower courts, he would appeal, and eventually those appeals would get to the Supreme Court, where a justice that he bankrolled would be in position to cast a deciding vote. That is probably not his biggest motivation. What's more likely is that Musk is doing this to place himself as the central banker of the MAGA movement, that he is the cash behind candidates that are loyal to Donald Trump. And by doing this, if he wins, he sets a template for all of the future Republican candidates running later this year and in the midterms next year, that if you're loyal to Trump and Musk, that you can expect him to come in and finance a television and ground game operation for your campaign.
And so far, what has Musk's money gone toward exactly in Wisconsin for this race?
Well, he has hired people to go door to door to pretty much hit every Trump voter in the state to remind them that if they want to see Trump's agenda enacted in Wisconsin, that they need to vote for Brad Schimmel. And he is paying these people $25 an hour, which is really an unheard of amount in politics. It's more than 3 times the minimum wage in Wisconsin.
Right.
It is a sum that, frankly, nobody else is able to match on the other side. He is also sending an unending stream of mail to Trump voters, reminding them to vote for Brad Schimmel to help President Trump. And he, with a separate organization, is bankrolling television ads that hammer Susan Crawford as soft on crime.
Susan Crawford's record, disturbing and dangerous.
And saying that during her time as a judge,
A 7-year-old girl sexually assaulted. The attacker faced 100 years. Crawford let him off with only 4.
I don't regret that sentence.
that she was too lenient in sentencing violent criminals. And again, he's also given money directly to the Republican Party of Wisconsin, which can then turn around and give all of it to Brad Schimmel's campaign. And all of this is just a precursor to Musk giving money directly to Wisconsin voters.
To voters?
To voters. He has engineered a plan where anybody who signs a petition saying that they oppose activist judges, which is the language that Republicans use to refer to judges who do anything that they don't like, gets $100 for signing the petition. It is a perhaps extra legal plan to get voters engaged in the race because it's against the law to pay people to vote, but it's not against the law to pay people to sign a petition in favor of a particular policy. And so that is what Musk is doing. And
kind of a backdoor, I mean, I'm going to use this word carefully, a backdoor bribe to a voter? I mean, how else to think about that? Is it legal?
It's not clear if it's legal. The Attorney General of Wisconsin, who's a Democrat, suggested that it's not. And he asked the state's courts to intervene to stop Elon Musk from handing out these $1 million checks. And over the weekend, the state Supreme Court declined to intervene. They allowed the event to go forward without making a ruling on whether it was legal or not. This whole scheme is the sort of thing that Musk can do because he has virtually unlimited money.
Right.
And to top it off, among those who have signed this petition for which they receive $100, Musk has chosen winners who he has said will receive $1 million.
Wow.
A real sort of publicity stunt to draw attention to his efforts to juice support for his candidate in this race.
I mean, that is truly astonishing.
Yeah, Musk had done a test run of this proposition during the presidential campaign in Pennsylvania, but we really haven't seen anything quite to the same scale as what we're witnessing in Wisconsin.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Elon Musk.
On Sunday night, Elon Musk went to Green Bay, where he held a rally for Brad Schimmel.
Everybody.
He walked out wearing one of those big yellow oversized cheese heads.
What do you think of my hat?
Like you see people wearing at Green Bay Packer games and other Wisconsin sporting events.
Like any federal judge can stop any action by the president, of the United States. This is insane. Like this has got to stop. But let me first hand out 2 $1 million checks in appreciation.
Musk went on to hand out oversized novelty checks to 2 winners for $1 million each.
Okay, so the first check goes to Nicholas Jacobs.
One of those just happened to be the chairman of the Wisconsin College Republicans. That brings a total to $3 million checks that he's given out just in the last week to Wisconsinites who share his support for Brad Schimmel.
So, Reed, how are the Democrats in Wisconsin responding to this onslaught? Because from what you have said here, it very much seems like this could potentially tip the race in the direction of Schimmel, despite whatever organic Democratic anger is out there. It just seems like a whole lot to counter.
Well, they have pretty much turned their entire campaign into one against Elon Musk.
Now Elon Musk is trying to buy Schimmel a seat on the Supreme Court because
they branded a statewide tour, The People versus Elon Musk.
He has now spent over $10 million on my opponent's race. He has basically taken over Brad Schimmel's campaign.
Their TV ads are trained on Brad Schimmel and his genuflecting toward Musk and Trump. There's one ad that's in heavy circulation.
Brad Schimmel is corrupt and will do anything to get on the Supreme Court.
They are working on a theory that is borne out somewhat by polling, that Democratic voters hate Elon Musk so much that running against him is even more effective than running against Donald Trump, which is saying something given how much Democratic voters hate Trump these days. And there is a real slice of voters in Wisconsin who voted for Trump who are not a fan of Musk. And so the Democratic game plan is to find those people and get them to vote for Judge Crawford.
This programming is sponsored by Pearland, Texas, offering new construction with custom options and amenities, mature neighborhoods filled. This programming is sponsored by Pearland, Texas, offering new construction with custom options and amenities, mature neighborhoods filled with trees and urban living. Details at pearlandedc.com/inspiration. Pearland, inspiration lives here.
Right? It's hard to imagine a world where Elon Musk doesn't apply these kinds of tactics to the midterm elections across the country in House and Senate races to try to preserve Republican majorities and defend Trump and Trumpism. And it's hard to imagine Democrats not trying to make these races about Musk and the oligarchy.
I mean, we've seen some of that already. We've seen Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez out on tour, drawing crowds of tens of thousands of people a couple weeks ago.
No, we will not accept an oligarchic form of society where a handful of billionaires run the government.
I saw them in Las Vegas with a pretty sizable crowd. I think the Democrats in Washington who have gotten the most traction in opposition to Trump have adopted a message that hits that point, that billionaires are controlling the country for themselves at the expense of people who rely on government programs like Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. And that is really going to be the Democratic playbook for the foreseeable future. And if Musk is able to snuff that out in Wisconsin and then elsewhere in the midterms, there's going to be a lot of hard questions for Democrats to answer about how they can be a majority party in the country.
Reed, you could make the argument that all of this may end up being very clarifying for Democrats, despite all the branding problems the party has, which is if they end up running over and over again against a billionaire who's bankrolling the other side, that the Democrats will have the makings of their own populist campaign message that the 99% of Americans who aren't billionaires need a voice against the 1% or so who are, and that there could be real long-term potency there.
Right. It's hard for them to have it both ways, to both be the party of the masses of working people in the country and be the party that has to be financed by its own billionaires. And there may be a point in the near future where Democrats have to make a choice about which of those lanes that they want to travel on.
And Musk may be decisive in that decision-making.
Musk may be making that choice for them, where they decide they have no tolerance for billionaires, even those that are friendly to them.
Well, Reed, Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael.
The Daily is supported by Made in Cookware. Made in Cookware is crafted by chefs for use in restaurants and home kitchens around the world. Their cookware can be found at madeincookware.com. For everything you need to know about the most important stories of the day, you're listening to The Daily from the New York Times, distributed by American Public Media. APM produces and distributes programs that entertain and engage audiences everywhere.
The Daily is powered by the journalism of the New York Times and is distributed by APM, American Public Media. You can go deeper into the stories you hear on The Daily at nytimes.com/The Daily. That's it for The Daily. I'm Michael Robardo. See you tomorrow.
Ever had a day full of mistakes? How about turning them into missed tacos? That's the idea behind a deliciously funny and beautifully illustrated new children's book by a Texas author. Plus incentives for filmmakers who choose to make their movies in the Lone Star State. All that and more on the next Texas Standard.
Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, right here on News 88.7. Tell your smart speaker to play News 88.7.
Last week, we at Today Explained brought you an episode titled The Joe Rogan of the Left. The Joe Rogan of the Left was in quotations. It was mostly about a guy named Hassan Piker, who some say is the Joe Rogan of the left. But enough about Joe. We made an episode about Hassan because the Democrats are really courting this dude.
So Hassan Piker is really the only major prominent leftist on Twitch, at least the only one who talks about politics all day.
What's going on, everybody? I hope everyone's having a fantastic evening, afternoon, prenoon, no matter where.
They want his cosign, they want his endorsement because he's young and he reaches millions of young people streaming on YouTube, TikTok, and especially Twitch. But last week he was streaming us.
Yeah, I was listening on stream and you guys were like, hey, you should come on the show if you're listening. I was like, oops, God.
You're a listener.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I am. Yeah.
Thank you for listening. Hassan Piker coming up on the show today.
Live from NPR News in Culver City, California, I'm Dwayne Brown. Government layoffs began today at the Food and Drug Administration and at the National Institutes of Health. NPR's Sydney Lupkin says it's all part of President Trump's effort to cut the Department of Health and Human Services by 25%.
Emails went out to FDA staffers early Tuesday morning that they no longer had jobs. According to an HHS fact sheet, 3,500 FDA jobs are being eliminated. It says the drug, device, and food reviewers and inspectors will be spared. Many FDA staffers and their work are funded by user fees paid by the industry. Congress passed the first user fee law in 1992 to fund staffing to speed drug approvals. The fees are paid by drug and device companies as well as the makers of certain tobacco products. Some of the staffers funded by these fees tell NPR they lost their jobs too, but because they weren't paid by taxpayers, those layoffs won't save taxpayer dollars. Sydney Lupkin, NPR News.
The U.S. has imposed sanctions on 2 people and half a dozen others believed to be involved with obtaining weapons for Iran. NPR's Jackie Northam tells us that move comes as the White House increases pressure on Iran to resume talks about its nuclear weapons program.
The Treasury Department says these sanctions target a network involved in procuring drone components for the Iranian regime, including businesses in the United Arab Emirates and China, as well as 2 individuals in Iran. In a statement, the Treasury Department says Iran's proliferation of drones and missiles to its allies in the Mideast threatens the U.S. and its partners in the region. The sanctions are part of Trump's decision to reimpose a so-called maximum pressure campaign against Iran to come to an agreement over its nuclear program. On Sunday, Trump threatened to bomb Iran, but said negotiations would be better. On Monday, Iran rejected direct negotiations with the U.S. Jackie Northam, NPR News.
Keep right and then exit right.
The FDA is recalling more than 200,000 pounds of liquid eggs, but this recall has nothing to do with bird flu. As NPR's Giles Snyder reports.
The products being recalled may contain a bleach cleaning solution. However, the Federal Agriculture Department says its scientists have determined the risk is negligible. The recall affects egg beaters and Bob Evans liquid egg substitutes made by Michigan-based Cargill Kitchen Solutions. The products were shipped earlier this month to distributors in Texas and Ohio and for food service use in Arizona, California, Colorado, Florida, Illinois, and Iowa. The recall comes amid the recent egg shortage caused by bird flu. Wholesale prices, however, have been falling lately. Bird flu has been slowing down and imports have risen. But with Easter and Passover approaching, officials warn prices may start inching back up. Giles Snyder, NPR News.
California relies on snow in the Sierra Nevada for year-round drinking water, and this year's snowpack is near normal at 90%, but despite some recent rainstorms, it's the first below-average snowpack since 2022. Melting snow from the Sierra Nevada supplies about a third of California's water supply on average. Lake Tahoe is forecast to get another 5 feet of new snow, and that has skiers and snowboarders stoked this late in the season. You're listening to NPR News.
To create enough lifetime memories to fill a book, Paul Theroux suggests you hit the road.
Leave home. I mean, you don't really know the world at all if you just stay at home.
Martin Sheen says someone always benefits from being a social justice activist, even if it's just you.
The only effect I'm absolutely certain I created was on myself.
And celebrate 20 years with us on The Next Travel with Rick Steves.
Saturday morning at 6 o'clock right here on News 88.7.
Support comes from attorney mediator Ron Bankston, providing in-person, video conference, and hybrid mediation and arbitration services. More information is available at ronbankston.com.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Whole Earth Provision Company, providing apparel, footwear, travel, gifts, toys, and curiosities since 1970. In-person shopping available or online at wholeearthprovision.com.
This is Today Explained.
I'm Hassan Piker, also known as Hassanabi online. I go by many names. Hassan the Hun on Twitter, Hassan D. Piker on TikTok, but Hassanabi primarily on Twitch. I'm live on Twitch every day from 11 a.m. Pacific time, usually around 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific time, every single day, 7 days a week. No matter where I am around the world, I try to hit that same time frame. And I'm a political commentator. People call me many different things. Radical, sometimes even a terrorism lover. Just, slander to I think, designations that I would not see fit for myself, such as like activist, organizer, or even journalist, really.
You are doing a lot of stuff and spending an enormous part of your day making yourself available to people on live streams, on social media. What do you think? Like, what's your sense of what people come to you for?
I think a lot of people see me as talk radio that's always on, but with a Zoomer/millennial focus rather than anything else. Like, it's not that unique. I'm not like necessarily reinventing the wheel here. I think it's just like a guy that you can have in the background while you're doing your chores and you stay up to date. Maybe also sharing the feeling of catharsis or anger that you feel as well, that is being channeled by the guy that you're getting your news from.
And the guy they're getting their news from has some strong political opinions, beliefs, and he talks about them often, but not exclusively.
Yeah.
What would you say are your politics? How would you describe them?
I mean, I call myself a leftist, definitely an anti-imperialist. I think I'm anti-war. I believe that we should not spend so much money on 800 military bases overseas and constantly bombing some of the poorest countries on the planet. And we should instead spend it on infrastructure, jobs programs, and expansion of the welfare state with the ultimate goal of creating a new way of organizing our economy and our society in general, an evolution from the existing form that is more egalitarian and has more benefits for as many people as possible. Because I think we're the wealthiest country on the planet. We are in the post-abundance universe, and I don't mean that in an Ezra Klein way. I mean, like, we literally have a surplus of food supply, for example. Like, 10 million people should not be dying due to famine-related diseases around the globe at this point. It's a matter of supply chains. Like, it's a matter of not wanting to feed people.
Now, Hassan Piker does not consider himself a Democrat, but he sees the Democrats as the only game in town. And a lot of people do. The Democratic tent has somehow grown to include everyone from Dick Cheney to Hassan Piker. We asked him if that's part of the problem the party's having right now.
No, I think that there's a difference between, like, growing your tent and then, I guess, like, what kind of message you're putting out. Because the Democrats didn't really need to do too much to get Liz Cheney on board, because they were basically regurgitating neocon policies in general, right? Both Biden and also Kamala Harris with her interest in continuing, like, the Biden agenda. So they didn't, like, you don't really need to court Dick Cheney in that regard. He just came on board because it makes sense. You're following, you're following his dreams and his agenda to begin with, especially in terms of foreign policy. What I want is for the Democrats to actually expand its tent to the American working class. I don't care about Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney can say he wants to vote for the Democratic Party. The Democrats should probably say, yeah, we don't care. You're a terrorist, or you're a war criminal. Your hands are bloody. Of course, they're not going to say that. But actually, Dick Cheney is the one person that you could probably say that about, and, like, most people would be like, yeah, that's fine. Like, even you might not even be able to get away with that with, like, GW, but you could get away with that with Dick Cheney. Like, he is a monster, and also deeply disliked. Like, there's no constituency for this man, just like there's no constituency for Liz Cheney. Like, they just tried to make it happen. They tried to make fetch happen with Liz Cheney so hard when they were just like, yeah, no, see, the country's over party. That's what we're doing. Me and Liz Cheney hand in hand. And it just, like, doesn't make any sense because no one is a Liz Cheney head.
Yeah.
Like, even the MSNBC watchers are like, I guess this is good because someone else might like it. That's always the marketing for the Democrats. Someone else is going to like this, I promise.
I asked Tim Walz how many votes he thought Liz Cheney won the Democrats or won Kamala Harris, and he dodged the question.
Yeah. I wish Tim was a little bit more of a fighter. That's the problem with a lot of these Democrats who I think are, like, much better politicians in general than the ones that get highlighted. The fighters are so technocratic and so invested in this third-way neoliberalism agenda. Like, they're zealots. But then the actual good, like, left populist or left populist adjacent Democratic Party politicians are unfortunately too soft. Like Bernie. Bernie is way too soft. I love him. I have so much respect for him. But this was my criticism of him in both 2016 and 2020. It's just like he was way too soft. In 2020 he also loves Joe Biden personally. That's another issue. But
soft how? Like how do you mean? You think his policies aren't hard?
No. That more. His policies. I mean, yeah, his policies are great. I think for the time they are, fairly normal demands that every American would agree to. It's just that, the entire media apparatus, and I would say that the party apparatus considers it to be like a Maoist third worldist position or something, when they're like, hey, can we get, like, social democracy Nordic style? And they're like, you want to kill every landlord, I think. Like, it's insane the way they treat the most basic stuff that every other competent OECD nation offers unconditionally to all of their citizens. But no, I mean, he needs to be more of a fighter he needs to be more adversarial with the media. He needs to be more adversarial with other establishment Democrats in a way that's not dissimilar to Donald Trump.
You have a lot of young people, 18 to 35. watching you, streaming you, engaging with you. What do you think their politics are?
I mean, it depends. It's a broad variety, but I would say that a lot of young people are devoid of hope. They recognize that they probably will never retire, that they will never be able to own a home, and that most of their salary, if they're lucky enough to get a job that they hate, regardless, is going to go back to their rent. And these are the issues that are I think, creating incredible amounts of pressure and pain in the minds of a lot of young people in this country. They just don't feel hopeful. And I understand it. I mean, how could you? How could you feel hopeful when looking around at your prospects and you're like, it looks dire?
And what do you say to them?
I tell them to not cave to nihilism, and to maintain revolutionary optimism, and to remind themselves that there are things that are in their control, self-improvement being one of those things, and that they should remember that their cause is just, and their demands are perfectly rational, and that they should continue trying to marginally improve both their personal standing, but also organize in their communities and unionize in their workplaces, so that they can see some immediate benefits to that through collective bargaining.
Hassan will return to tell us more about self-improvement in a minute on Today Explained.
Today Explained is supported by BetterHelp, committed to helping clients with issues ranging from relationship challenges and goal setting to grief and depression. Learn more at betterhelp.com/public. Today Explained is supported by Betterment, an automated investing platform that helps make it easy to invest. Learn more at betterment.com. Investing involves risk.
Did you know 80% of our funding comes from listeners like you, right here in Houston? That's why your support is so important. When you give to Houston Public Media, you're investing in trusted news and educational programming that millions depend on daily. Every dollar you give makes a difference, ensuring this public service stays strong for everyone in our community. Help us support this mission. Give today at HoustonPublicMedia.org or call 888-909-0887.
Support comes from Alley Theater, presenting Ken Ludwig's Baskerville, a Sherlock Holmes mystery, featuring Todd Waite's farewell role as Sherlock, in a mystery that is equal parts whodunit and hilarity. Performances April 4th through May 4th. Tickets at alleytheater.org.
Houston Public Media brings to you PBS World. Experience the personal connection behind the headlines, with programming devoted to telling stories that humanize complex issues. PBS World on TV 8.6 and online at houstonpublicmedia.org.
Go straight on.
Today Explained is back with Hassan Piker. If you've never seen him, he is jacked. And we don't usually ask our guests about their appearance, but we kind of felt like we had to with Hassan because it's a big part of his persona. So, here we go. You're like a bigger dude. I'm like a skinny dude. Do you look at me and be like, why is this guy self-improving more? Why hasn't he fully actualized himself?
No, not at all. I mean, first of all, self-improvement doesn't mean like reaching a final stage or anything. It means like improving yourself in both invisible and visible ways, and bettering yourself from where you were the day prior. It has nothing to do with like where you have gotten to. I mean, it's great. It's definitely fantastic for your confidence if you do improve yourself and then you start seeing those benefits. But, it has nothing to do with like the way you look right now, there's nothing wrong with the way you look. You look great.
Thank you so much.
You're very handsome.
You look great too. You're very handsome as well. What's your protein intake? Is there a lot of protein going on?
Yes, I consume about 200 at a minimum 220 grams of protein every day.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's all right. I eat a lot of chicken. I love chicken, so it's fine. Straight white chicken breasts every day.
How much do you feel like being kind of yoked is like part of your draw and your persona?
I think initially in leftist circles it's a negative. people look at me and immediately assume that I am a right-wing dude. I mean, at this point, it's like hard to say that because obviously most people know what my politics are. But if you don't know who I am from afar, you think like, oh, that's like a alpha bro, potentially right-wing kind of guy.
What is your read on why this male optimization getting, really beefed up has like a left-right divide? And what is that divide about?
I mean, I think there's a bunch of different reasons for it. But I think like a lot of these guys, they don't think too hard about politics. And then they find themselves trapped in this right-wing bubble. And then I think that they just like associate that with they associate like self-improvement and self-help with that in general. It's not, self-help inherently is not like a leftist or a right-wing thing, I don't think. But it does seem like a lot of the content creators that are promoting that and presenting themselves as that are definitely
right.
At the very least right-wing. But I think part of it is because that's just the domineering attitude in general. If you don't really think about things too much, you kind of find yourself susceptible to social conditioning. And that does have a right-wing slant.
And then turn
the whole common sense narrative. It's like, oh, this is just common sense. I don't understand. Two genders, common sense. Like, you didn't put a lot of thought into it. That's just what you learned your entire life. So, of course, like, you kind of slot yourself into the right wing in that regard. I guess the other reason is because self-improvement can turn into hyper-individualism very quickly, which is also another incredibly American attitude in general. But like, that's what it is. Those are the two main factors, I think.
And you try to couple self-improvement with helping others, which feels really critical in this moment where a lot of people feel lost, but that leads to them becoming more inward, introverted, even angry.
Yeah.
How do you feel like you're faring in that battle right now to not just, improve yourself inside and out, but to be more considerate of those around you?
I don't know. I mean, I'm a stubborn dude. And I'm not like, doing deliberate gym content specifically because like I want to penetrate like the alpha bro fitness space. It's just like something that I have always liked to do organically. And the content creators that I watch from that space are people that I end up collaborating with or have at least like some
and then turn
some mutual interests with, like mutual shared interests with. So that's what it is. It's not me just being like, ooh, if I work out and like present myself as this guy, then more alpha bros will listen to me. Because a lot of people will still, especially something I've seen online is that like people would rather hear your output and then make up their minds rather than like look at you or genuinely understand whether you care about certain things or not. Like there's this phenomenon online where like Ben Shapiro says the masculine things, so he's more masculine than someone like myself. I'm soy, I'm gay, I'm lame because I think you shouldn't be mean to trans people. Ben, on the other hand, is mean to trans people, and that means you're alpha. It's like, what the f*** are you talking about? He's like 5 foot. I think that the reason why the right is so successful at capturing the attention